Hello, Liverpool fans. Welcome back to the Liverpool Reaction, an American LFC podcast. Coach Ralph and I are very excited to bring you this podcast. From games to players to club news, we cover everything LFC. You can find us on every platform, and we are even on YouTube. Please take the time to follow the podcast. That way you are aware every time a new podcast is up. Thank you for listening. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Liverpool Reaction, an American LFC podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Salim, and I got my co-host, Coach Ralph, with me. Coach, how are you?
I'm very good, Salim. Yourself? You're sounding positive after the season, even though it's over?
Yeah. I think, we talked about even our first podcast, you had mentioned that it might be the only cup we won because we did our first podcast right after the Caribou Cup.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of constantly talked about, hey, would it be a successful season? And I think it was. It was a disappointing ending, but overall, I think there was a lot of good things considering this was going to be a transitional year.
Yes, yeah. I think that you're right there because for a lot of people, and I think many of the pundits, they weren't expecting much from Liverpool this season. And for that brief period, they were in the chase and in the hunt for 4 different trophies.
Yeah. Today's episode, we're going to kind of recap the season. We're going to recap the players. Coach and I have done some homework on some stats and just the overall feeling of the season. We're going to break it up in thirds because there's 39 games. So it just makes sense that we kind of break it up that way. So we get a full picture versus a recency bias of the last 13 games. So, Coach, let's start with the first third of the season. There was a lot of games, and we're just going to focus on the Premier League, and then we'll touch a little bit on FA Cup, Europa League, and the Caribou Cup.
Mm-hmm. Yep, sure.
So, what are some of your thoughts about the first third of the season?
Liverpool made a very strong start to the season. I'd kind of hinted before that a lot of pundits weren't expecting much of Liverpool this year, which I felt was a little bit strange because 2 years ago they were very close to completing an unprecedented quadruple. Mm-hmm. And the season afterwards maybe wasn't at the same level. You know, they were a fatigued squad that needed refreshing, but they still, you know, they ended up 5th, and they were still a strong squad. And my feeling was that after a period of rest, they had signed some new blood in midfield. That I was expecting them to be well in contention for Champions League, maybe not the title, but certainly in contention for Champions League. And if you look back at the start of the season, they had a great run. The first third of the season basically went on till early December when they had that dramatic 4-3 game against Fulham at Anfield. Mm-hmm. And they were doing well. They had that run early in the season where just about every game they were getting red cards. And nearly all the red cards were for offences that later in the season would not have been red cards. So they were getting results in spite of that, with the one exception being the Tottenham game where they had 2 red cards, not just one, they had 2. And we had all the other stuff, notably the Diaz disallowed goal that was a goal.
Yeah.
And they were very unfortunate to lose that game, I thought, because I felt that they were the better of the 2 teams, despite having less players. And it was only that unlucky ricochet off Joel Matip in injury time that gave Spurs the win.
Yeah, the return fixture specifically on that game was big because they were celebrating like they won, the League Cup or some. I mean, there was a lot of celebrations from Tottenham that rubbed some Liverpool fans the wrong way, considering how unjust we felt the game was. But yeah, a bunch of red. I think that's a perfect way to describe it. A lot of weird red cards. But a good start to the season. The one game I think that sticks out to all of us is that Tottenham game. I think you're 100% right that's a game to highlight. However, it kind of personified the first third of the season with the red cards but still coming through. I think also we have to mention the Newcastle game.
Oh yes, yeah. I mean, because that was quite dramatic, and they were really put to the sword in the first half, because I think Newcastle was still in kind of that feeling like they'd had a great season the year before, and they scored. Van Dijk was sent off, and they were taking the game to Liverpool, and Liverpool did struggle in that first period, but after half time they seemed to settle, they seemed to steady the boat, and ultimately it came down to the introduction of the controversial Darwin Núñez with his two late breakaways and two fantastic goals to win the game.
Yeah, that's one of the games when you're a fan of somebody, you feel like you got away with one. You know, everything was kind of going the other way. The red card in the second half. I was reading a lot of things about that game and watching some YouTube videos and how people were analyzing what Jurgen Klopp did, and it seems like he brought the wide guys, Mo Salah, and I'm pretty sure it was Lucho, and kind of brought them in.
Mm-hmm.
So the space was out wide for Newcastle, but not in the back. Mm-hmm. And when they got the ball, they could really attack down the middle. And both of Darwin's goals are on the right side, but they're down the middle, though.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. And, I think because of Darwin's I don't know, I guess his inability to score goals regularly, but we also saw a flash of what he can do. Mm-hmm. And I'm really glad that I've been reading that Liverpool is backing Darwin again this season, and they think they can develop him to be a 20-plus goal scorer. So I really love that, and that game was incredible.
Mm-hmm. Well, I hope they're right about the 20-goal season for Núñez. I mean, I think any team wants a goal scorer at that level, and I think he has the potential. I think he has all the tools for sure.
Yeah, I was kind of doing some research on him, and from an expected goals per 90, he was second. And from a shot standpoint, he had 100 and one second. Let me pull that up because I thought this was really fascinating. Here we go. All right, yeah. So he had 100 and where is it, Darwin? Sorry, he was fourth, and he had 104 shots and a .79. 108 shots and a .79 expected goals per game. Just to put that in comparison, Erling Haaland had a 1.09 expected goals per 90, so a goal a game, and he had 121 shots. Mm-hmm. So for Darwin having the third most shots behind, or fourth most shots behind Haaland, Salah, and Cole Palmer, if a couple more go in, you can kind of see how he'd get rolling. And having 11 goals, 8 assists, you can see how that number could be 16, 17, 18. And then I started thinking about penalties also, right? Mo Salah takes the penalties. And he got, I think, 4 or 5 goals from penalties. Haaland had 7 goals from penalties. And I'm just thinking, well, if we shift those over to Darwin, I know he missed one off the post in one game, but if we shift those over, I mean, that's 16 goals. But I really do think that we got to give him another year. It's tough coming to the Premier League. I think he's kind of maturing in front of us. Yes, it's frustrating to see him miss goals. The expected goals and the shots also make sense. Like, our feelings about him are correct that he does miss chances, especially with 108 shots and, pretty much a goal every other game is kind of the expected goals. So I think we have some. We have to give him another year, is basically what I'm saying, and I think he can come good. And the numbers actually say that, hey, he could. This could go back to the mean, and he could score a lot of goals. So that's encouraging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, look, I think Nunes is always going to suffer from the perspective that he was signed at the same time or around the same time as Erling Haaland, and Manchester City and Liverpool have been big rivals the last few seasons. So I think he's always going to suffer in comparison. And I think I saw one stat that he, in terms of missed chances this year, missed big chances, or however they classify it, he was second in the league. The first, though, was actually Haaland. But the flip side of that is obviously that Haaland converts more and also takes penalties, as you rightly pointed out. So I feel it's good to keep him involved, as long as he wants to be involved, because you've got all these rumours floating around right now, and who knows what's really going on and what have you. But I just see a player that's got a lot of tools. He's dynamic. He does some other things. He certainly sets up goals for others, and as everybody likes to point out, he creates havoc for the opposition.
Mm-hmm.
So he has some other things going for him. He has several things going for him, in fact. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he does under the new regime and if he has a place in the new regime.
Yeah, you mentioned his assists. He had 8 assists, which was second on the team behind Mo. So yeah, the involvement, he's there. He plays hard, like you said. It's worth taking a chance, right, for another season for sure. I mean, maybe even 2. Maybe he shows a big progress next year. Maybe if Mo's gone, maybe he now feels more comfortable being the guy. I don't know, but it'll be interesting to see. Anyway, so the first 13, I believe we were first or second when we faced Manchester City in the 13th game week with a 1-1 draw.
We were second at the time. We were second at the time that we played Manchester City, and it was a good game. It was a good game. I thought City was on top in the first half, and then the second half, Liverpool more than came back into it, and were well worth the draw at the end of the day.
Yeah, Trent's goal was really nice in that game. Quick touch and kind of caught the goalie off guard there with a quick hit. And yeah, well, I think that result was fair.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Liverpool have certainly played City well this year, and obviously we'll come on to the Anfield game in due course.
Sure. Yeah. So the game week 14 starts with that incredible game against Fulham, the 4-3 game, and that one, and that was I would say that would be the big game there for the second third of the season. That one, maybe the Chelsea 4-1 win, but also the 3-1 loss to Arsenal was in that third. But what do you want to cover? What sticks out to you?
Well, the middle third you're talking about now. The middle third, the only loss that they had in the middle third in the league was the 3-1 loss down at the Emirates against Arsenal. So Liverpool was still doing remarkably well because at that point they're starting to pick up injuries. Mm-hmm. And somehow they just seem to be able to eke out results one way or another. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it was just an incredible run, given, as I say, the injuries. There was a little bit of a rebuild in midfield. I think some people felt that because Moses Caicedo rejected Liverpool and chose to go to Chelsea, that really that was kind of a reflection of the way that Liverpool were going to be, particularly in midfield. And of course, it didn't turn out to be that way, because they got McAllister for a price that in the modern market is a bargain. Mm-hmm. And he had a great season. They picked up Endo, basically in place of Casido and Lavia. And he was certainly a dark horse, all right, in as much as he took a little time to settle, but he turned into a pivotal player for Liverpool.
Mm-hmm.
And even though Szoboszlai kind of faded towards the end of the season, clearly he's a talent, and I would imagine has a good future at Anfield in the future. So Liverpool were doing remarkably well, and I did see one stat. If we go from looking at the season by thirds, looking at it by halves, Liverpool were top of the table based on the first half of the season, 19 games in.
Yeah.
And everything was going great given all of the things that we've just mentioned.
Yeah, and that's why at the beginning of the season, if we were to be told, hey, you're going to win one cup, we probably would have said, yeah, I would take it. And it's funny how expectations shift up when it comes to results. And Szoboszlai, I think, is a really good, microcosm of kind of our season, right? He started strong and kind of faded, kind of like the team did. But I fully expect him to play really well next year. Would like to see him a little bit more involved in goals and chances. Saying that, he was very involved. He did score 3 goals, had 5 assists. There was countless times where him and Mo Salah would interchange and he would get to the byline and cross. So, and obviously the biggest thing we saw from him right from the beginning was his engine. I mean, a lot of energy, pushed forward, came back. I think that people might think it's a mixed bag for Szoboszlai's season, but I think considering it's his first in the Premier League, considering the style of play he had to adjust to, I think he's a good signing as well.
Oh, I think he's a great signing because you've pointed out some of his qualities, but he's very athletic. He packs a tremendous shot. He's got a lot of power in his game. And I think the more he's at Anfield, I think the more that we're going to see from him because he'll be more settled going into next season. He knows what the lay of the land is like. He knows what the Premier League is like. And he's got all the tools, just like Nunes, like all these players have tools. And so now it's up to Arne Slot to get them together and hopefully get them showing exactly what they can do to the best of their ability.
Yeah, and another thing with Arne Slot is that his style is very similar to Klopp, and that was very important to the Liverpool hierarchy to kind of continue this style of play. So you're not getting you're going to get a manager with new ideas, but not completely revamp the system, which I think is going to benefit these newer guys, Szoboszlai, Maka, Darwin, Gravenberch, all these guys. So I think it's a really good. It's a smart signing. It makes a lot of sense when you think of it from that standpoint. And, you mentioned Endo and Maka, and not only did Endo come good, I think middle third of the season, he was really, really, really good. But it also freed up McAllister to move up to the 8, where he is much more of a threat. Although it's funny, defensively, his numbers are really, really good. So it's interesting that we kind of see him as a skilled player that can help the attack, but defensively, he's also very strong. And it's something that kind of surprised me when I was doing some research defensively on him. But Endo, I think the thing that would have benefited the defensive midfield position, and you highlighted this several times, is I sometimes can't pronounce his name very well, but Bajcetic. Him being out really, really hurt because him and Endo could rotate, and it would have been nice to have somebody there that can spell Endo. And from the beginning of the season, the first third, he could have really started the season to let Endo get comfortable. So. Yeah, is what it is, though, and hopefully he did get a couple minutes. I think in
Yeah.
couple of games ago.
He figured in a couple of games at the end of the season, but he showed the season before when Liverpool was struggling a bit that he can take the reins, and even though he's a teenager, he has something to offer. He has something to offer the first team. So hopefully he's fit and ready for next season, and one of a number of talented players that Arne Slot will have to look at.
Yeah, the other midfielders, Gravenberch and Curtis Jones, are well. First, let's talk about Elliott. Elliott earned his place, and Klopp even said the one thing he wishes he did was start Elliott more. Elliott was extremely effective anytime he played, whether he was off the bench or starting. His stats ended up with 3 goals, 6 assists, but I think his pressing and his complete understanding of the system were some other strong points that you can't kind of quantify with numbers.
Yeah, Elliott's an excellent player, and I know that beyond Liverpool, he's a player that tends to get overlooked a little bit by the media. A couple of people have suggested that he should be in the running for the England team, and I don't think I can't disagree with that. I can't disagree. He's just very good on the ball. Like that. That's his one thing. He holds possession, and he's got a lot of energy. He's got so many positives going for him.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel he gets overlooked a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. But I think at the end of the season, we were all saying how impressed we were with him, and when Klopp kind of mentioned, hey, the one thing, if I could redo it, I would start Elliott more. But I understand that's always a conundrum when we play, Monday quarterback. It's difficult. And Klopp, for the most part, had strokes of genius throughout, especially with the 5 subs and bringing people in and really changing games, because we were letting the first goal in, it seemed like almost the majority of the game. So it was nice that he had these options to come on and really turn a game around.
Yeah. So you've highlighted another asset of Elliott. He could be an impact sub, basically. So he's a great player to have within your ranks, definitely.
With Gravenberch and Curtis, I think Gravenberch is a clear. What's clear about his game is that he needs to get adjusted to the Premier League. That was very clear to me. One thing that I really like about Gravenberch is he carries the ball well, and like from a dribbling standpoint, from the midfield, you saw a couple times how he was driving the ball forward, and he's a big guy, or a tall guy, so you can kind of see how he would be a really good midfielder. However, I'm not sure that he would crack the Szoboszlai, Maka, Elliott, Endo, Bajcetic midfield, because picking 3 of the 5 there, I just don't know if he's going to crack that, or maybe the Dutch manager, him being Dutch, they'll be able to kind of work better, and he can really elevate his game. And Curtis Jones, silky player. I really like his game. He was into a rhythm before he got hurt, but again, I'm just not sure if he's going to crack the midfield. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, looking at both of them, I mean, Gravenberch is very similar in a sense to Szoboszlai. He's a power midfielder.
Yes.
Big, strong, kind of accelerates forward with the ball in similar fashion to Szoboszlai. He started quite well. I think he scored a couple of goals early coming off the bench, and then he went through a long period where when he played, a lot of his decision making was inconsistent. He had a little bit of a flurry towards the end of the season where he looked a bit better. So I think you might be right. Maybe the key is having a Dutch manager alongside him might start to bring out a little bit more from him. Jones is an interesting player because in theory he's a player that you'd like to see succeed, and obviously Jurgen Klopp rated him, and I thought he had a good run this season until his injury, and then he was never quite the same after the injury. And for me, his problem has always been that he tends to dwell on the ball too much.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't make decisive choices early sometimes, and he seemed to be getting past that. He's got more of an athletic dimension, say, than Elliott. And coming back to Elliott again, I think that's maybe a reason why he tends to be written off a little bit, because he's not as athletic. He's not a big player. He's not athletic compared to some of the other players at Anfield and that he would be in contention with for the national team and what have you. But so Jones has some athletic dimensions, but he's not a power player like Gravenberch. He's as you say, he's a little silkier on the ball. He's got some skills. He's got some moves, and I think ultimately he's yet to convince everybody that he can do it over an entire season. I think that's his issue right now. He's been called up for the national team. I have a feeling that he'll probably be cut, though. I'm not sure that he will go to Germany for the Euros. I think he'll be one of the 7 that will miss out, and probably Kwanzaa as well. But having said that, you know, he's kind of moving up the table, as it were, in terms of recognition and what have you. Will that give him some confidence? I think we'll have to wait and see on that score. But yeah, does he have a long-term future? I think in theory you'd like to say yes, because he's from Liverpool and he's a Scouser and all of that. But I think he's got a ways to go still.
Yeah, the question with him is what does the next level look like for him to level up his game? And that's where it gets a little, I'm not sure. But however, though, saying all that, Gravenberch, Curtis, we're going to be playing a ton of games again. We're in the Champions League. There's the FA Cup. There's the Carabao Cup. So there's plenty of games where these guys will see first team action, which is nice. And I think those are the tournaments where they will be highlighted and they'll play. I think a good kind of comparison of what we'd like to see in those tournaments from not the normal starters in the Premier League would be kind of like a Minamino, who had an unbelievable run in the FA Cup. He was scoring goals. He could not transition that to the Premier League, and he couldn't crack the first team there. But when he played a couple years back, he was awesome in those other tournaments. So it'd be nice if we could see kind of a couple of these guys make that jump like Minamino did, and then we can now, if we have any injuries, we can feel a lot more comfortable about them in the Premier League to really compete with, Manchester City and Arsenal, who had great seasons and they're not going anywhere.
Yeah. I mean, I think ultimately that if you actually analyze, because it is a squad game, and I kind of laugh when I still hear pundits talking about managers knowing their first 11 or their best 11, because it's not an 11-man game anymore, and it hasn't been for a long time now. And if you think about it, I think to be at the very top, competing across the board, you need 24 very high-level players that can kind of come in and do a job in league games, in cup games, whatever. So break it down. So what's that? That's 3 goalkeepers, 8 defenders, 8 in midfield.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it's 24 because you need about 5 strikers. So actually it's a little more. About 24 players is what you need.
Mm-hmm.
And you possibly need then another 3 or 4 beyond that from your academy, as we've kind of seen this season, that if it gets down to an emergency, that can bridge the gap.
Yeah.
And it seems that the way that the academy is right now, that they do have those numbers, because, I mean, obviously you had Kwanzaa come in defence, you had Bradley come in defence. You've already got players like Jones and Elliott well established from the academy in the midfield, but then you had Bobby Clark, James McConnell. They came in, they did a great job. You've got Ben Doak, who's kind of a wide striker, who again has missed a lot of the season, like Bajcetic. And I think both of those players, Doak and Bajcetic, that if they'd have been fit this year, I think we'd have seen quite a bit of them, given all the injuries that Liverpool had. And then you've got the young strikers that kind of came through in that Carabao Cup period.
Kumas and Dans.
Jayden Dans. Yeah, Dans and...
Kumas.
Kumas, yeah. I'm thinking of his father, like his father. His father was at Liverpool as a junior and had a good career playing elsewhere in the Football League. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how the new manager kind of realigns the squad, given a minimum of 24 players, 24 top players, and then, as I say, a handful of academy players beyond that.
Yeah, I really liked that was the most fun, wasn't it? Like when the kids were in, as they were saying, and they were playing well and we were winning games. I mean, Klopp mentioned how that, I think the Carabao Cup was his, favorite final, favorite cup because of what they went through and how the youngsters came in and did a good job. And it was fun. That little run of the season was a lot of fun because we didn't know what to expect, and these boys delivered. You mentioned the forwards, right? You said 5 forwards. So Gakpo, Mo, Darwin, Jota, and Lucho. So out of that, we gotta, I think put 3 in, right? And when I was kind of doing like team of the season kind of thing, like who would, and understanding what you said, that you do need more than 11 players, but who would be the starters from a standpoint of if we had our choice, everything was right, no injuries, no nothing. And I think Kelleher or Allison, I think this year you could flip a coin and be happy with either one. The midfield, Elliott, Endo, and Maka, I think really played the best together, even though the end of the season wasn't that great. I thought they played well. And then Mo, Darwin, and Lucho up front, and with the back being Trent, Robo, Van Dijk, and Kwanzaa. Now, the forwards, we had a pretty successful forward line. I mean, the goals, Gakpo had 8 in the Premier League. Mo had 18, Darwin 11, Jota had 10, and Lucho had 8. So I can't do those numbers real fast in my head, but it's over 50. So that's pretty good.
Oh, well, Liverpool aren't short of options up front. And when you consider they've got three goal-scoring prospects in their academy in Doak, Dans, and Kumas as well, who I think are pretty big talents, actually, all 3 of them. So and other teams in the Premier League that struggle for goal-scoring prospects, Liverpool are not in that situation for sure.
Yeah. The one thing that I found extremely interesting from the forward line, and it kind of, again, backs up our eyes. And our eyes kind of always told us that Jota is the best finisher in that front line. He gets a chance, he scores. And then I started really looking into the numbers. So I'd mentioned that Darwin had 11 goals and 108 shots.
Mm-hmm.
How many shots do you think it took for Jota to score 10?
Well, nowhere near that because he missed a lot of the season. He scored 10 goals. I'll go for like 50 to 60.
41 shots.
Oh,
Yeah. So now if he was healthy and you kind of extrapolate that forward, right? Mo had 18 goals on 114 shots. So granted he was scoring chances again, like what, it just seemed every chance he had he was scoring. He was scoring a goal every 4 shots. Now, if he plays a full season, does that equal now 20 goals on, say 90 shots? I don't know, maybe. But
possibly, yeah. I think the issue with Jota and I know there's all the stats analysis this year. It is how does his goal scoring compare when he starts a game versus how does it compare when he comes off the bench? Because in my mind, I think he's a great striker to bring off the bench in the way that Solskjaer was for Manchester United back in time.
Yeah.
In my mind, that is Jota. So I'd be interested to hear a statistical comparison of the two. But I think one thing's for sure, he knows how to finish. I think there's no question of that.
I think either way you couldn't really miss. Say the forward line stays the same and there's no exodus or new people coming in. You Mo and Lucho on the wings, and Darwin was pretty effective too coming off the bench. So it'd be interesting to see how Arnie sees that, and I think either way you can't really go wrong, right? I mean, you get one to start, and maybe Jota's more effective off the bench, but Darwin can be, very effective because of his speed and his physical qualities off the bench as well when the other team's tiring. I think we're in good shape with those two guys, I think. And Darwin, if he can just take one step up, this team's going to be even more scary than this past year.
Look, Liverpool have tools. There's absolutely no question about that. They've got a good squad, and I think that's one of the things that maybe puts pressure on whoever takes over from Jurgen Klopp. They're not inheriting kind of a group of players that that need to be overhauled to any great degree. I'm sure he'll probably tweak it here and there because even though he has similarities to Jurgen Klopp in terms of his playing style, I believe there are some differences as well in terms of he'll be more possession based at times. Although I think Liverpool were underrated in that department. Mm-hmm. I mean, Liverpool were possessed, but they weren't like a Manchester City possession team, for example. But then who is?
Right.
So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the manager tweaks the squad now, because word is, that they're going to look to buy some players this summer.
Correct. Yeah. Let's talk about the tail end of the season. So from 27 on.
Well, the second third of the season in terms of league games ended with that dramatic Nottingham Forest game, where Nunes scored the winner in the dying minutes of added time and what have you. And
yeah, that was a good game.
Everything seemed to be going along pretty well because they played Manchester City soon afterwards, or the week afterwards.
Yeah, the week after. Mm-hmm.
And one thing that was interesting in one of the Jurgen Klopp interviews before he left was he was talking about the Manchester City game at Anfield in terms of given the team that Liverpool had out that day, he's never seen his team dominate Manchester City to such a degree. I mean, because he started that day with, let me see, with 1, 2, 3, 4, with 4 academy players. And then in terms of, he didn't bring any academy lads on, but, he was really going through the injury streak at that time. And again, like the game in Manchester, I thought City edged the first half, but then Liverpool took over in the second half.
Yeah.
And of course, for Liverpool fans, we'll always talk about the Doku incident at the end of the game. But yeah, Liverpool played extremely well. The week after, though, it is when things kind of that's when things went awry. That's when things went awry with the Manchester United Cup loss. And I think psychologically, the 2 Manchester games, not just the Cup game, but also the league game, which was a draw, games that statistically Liverpool dominated to a ridiculous degree, but they couldn't get over the line. Like the Manchester United performance in those games wasn't at the level of their cup final performance at the weekend, for example. They were all over the place. And relied on individual brilliance. But yeah, Liverpool couldn't get past them. And I think psychologically that damaged the team, leading to the loss against Palace and Atalanta in the Europa League and what have you. And then the final dagger to the heart came from the other big rival, Everton, in the derby game. So it was our big rivals that kind of really, really killed the season, unfortunately. But again, if you're looking at the overall picture, the second half of the season, Liverpool, in terms of their record, had the 3rd best record in the Premier League. But Manchester City increased their points yield by 11 points in the second half of the season. Liverpool went down 2 points. Manchester City went up 11, and Arsenal went up 9. And that's where the league was lost, obviously, latterly in the season.
Yeah, and Manchester City makes these runs, it seems like every year, where they win, 12, 13, 14 games in a row, and it's just mind-boggling. The missed opportunity at City, the Crystal Palace loss, and the Everton loss. I think that, yeah, like you said, and the United draw 2-2. Yeah, it's tough, but that's soccer, that's football, it happens, and overall, a really good season. The Europa League exit was a little shocking, but Atalanta won the Europa League and actually thrashed Bayer Leverkusen for their first loss of the year. So, we lost to a worthy opponent.
Oh, well, you could argue that both cup losses were against the teams that won the cup.
So, yeah, that's true.
So yeah, that is kind of how it was. And so I think that if you're going to look at the season in total, it was a good season. If it was disappointing, it was because for a short window there, all of a sudden it looked like it was going to go to a level that none of us had anticipated. Yeah. And the team and the manager did remarkably well to put Liverpool in that position. But they just couldn't sustain it at the end of the day. They just couldn't sustain it. So whether they ran out of gas, there's limitations in the squad, whatever, they couldn't see it through to the end in all competitions. But I think I tend to be a little more level-headed than many supporters, in as much as, I think that you got to look at the squad and say, okay, they're good. They have some limitations. They had some challenges, that they couldn't overcome this year. And as you say, that is football. That is football. I think we're fortunate to have had the run we've had for the last few years. And I always feel fortunate that Liverpool's been the team that they have been, since I supported them as a boy, because as I think I've mentioned before, in my whole time supporting them, the lowest they've ever finished is 8th, which is a pretty remarkable record for over 60 years. So like, even though people will talk about, oh, well, they were out of contention for a period and all of that, I think that if you analyse it, Liverpool have always been there or thereabouts, and if they weren't high in the league, then they were challenging for cups. Some they would win, some they would lose, but they've always been a challenging team in my lifetime, and they were this year, and maybe we didn't expect it to the degree that it was.
Yeah, and you mentioned some hurdles that they couldn't get past, but there was also some hurdles that they did get past, and that was nice to see as well. Again, the youngsters in the academy, I think that was incredible. The new basically a whole new midfield that went better than we anticipated, and the Kelleher in goal, I mean, was
Kelleher, yes, and
amazing.
Thinking back to what we mentioned before, I mean, like that early season run where they were picking up red cards every week, and they were still getting results. So yeah, they did incredibly well. They did incredibly well, and we can be disappointed that they didn't sustain it to the end. But that's basically where the team is at right now.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, with everything that happened, I think third place is probably right. I would, Arsenal and City, like you mentioned, the points gained in the second half of the season. I think Arsenal had 16 clean sheets, so their defense was rock solid. They have great players all over the place. So it was, at the end of the day, it's probably a correct position in the league, but it also guarantees us Champions League football, which is awesome. And, we'll see what Arne Slot does with the people coming in and the people going out. And I think we're primed for a pretty good season next year and ready to challenge again.
Right. Oh, yeah, I think there's every reason to be optimistic. And I think as long as the fans are patient, because as we keep saying, the new manager has some very big shoes to fill. And I'm sure there'll be some good runs, and I'm sure there'll be some wobbles and some lesser runs. I mean, it was like that with Jurgen as well. I mean, I can remember some of the games where they lost at places like Hull and Watford, where Liverpool were absolutely abysmal. But yeah, I mean, like there's going to be teething problems. I think that we've got to expect that, and I know people compare it to when Shankly left and then Paisley came in. And actually, I remember Paisley's first season when Liverpool came second, and I had doubts whether he could take over from Shanks. Will it be the same here with Arne Slot? Is he going to be the Bob Paisley to the Bill Shankly of Jurgen Klopp? I think football's totally different now, in as much as there's only a few teams that can really win the title now. I don't think it was like that in the 70s. And you could argue there's only one team that can really win the league right now. I don't think that's inaccurate, that statement. I think that has to be determined whether it's by fair or foul means. As we keep saying, I wish they would sort that out either way, so that if they have done it by fair means, we can give them begrudging admiration. But anyway, so we'll have to wait and see on that call.
Yeah, will be interesting. They've set a date, but they're not telling anybody when the date is. Whatever.
Look, I look at all the things that are going on in the world right now, and this trial down in New York where basically everybody has to agree, and nobody agrees on anything anymore. So I think it's the same in football as well. I just get a feeling that, I hear a few fans saying, "Oh, City will make a deal or whatever," and the cynical part of me is agreeing with that. So we'll have to see, won't we?
Yeah, but I think again, we're happy with the results. We're happy with the quote unquote transition year. The Caribou Cup was a lot of fun. The boys were a lot of fun. The team is set up much better for the successor, who is Arne Slot, and I'm very, very optimistic, like you said, for the future. I think with that, we're going to end the podcast. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Liverpool fans, we're with you. We're excited for the future. We will have a lot of cool, different content for you guys coming up, and we're excited to continue talking about Liverpool.
Okay, goodbye, everyone, and hope you enjoyed the season too, and hopefully there's more to come in the future.
Take care, everybody. Liverpool fans, thank you so much for listening to the Liverpool Reaction, an American LFC podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show and would greatly appreciate your support. Please leave a 5-star review and feel free to email us at tlrlfcpodcast@gmail.com. Looking forward to hearing from you. Till next time. Liverpool fans, thank you so much for listening to the Liverpool Reaction, an American LFC podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show and would greatly appreciate your support. Please leave a 5-star review and feel free to email us at tlrlfcpodcast@gmail.com. Looking forward to hearing from you. Till next time.